Coming at you from the south side of Chicago, straight out of my mother's basement at my childhood home, I'd like to welcome you all to the Power to Persist. Ashley, welcome to the Power to Persist. You're in the basement, you're on the south side of Chicago, you're in Woodlawn.
It's amazing to be here, and I'm in your home.
This is
your
my
childhood home.
This is my childhood home.
First time is exciting.
I'm going to tell on you real quick. I'm going to tell everyone.
Okay, make sure it's good though.
so listen. I had some food here for Ashley, everyone, and it was some chicken and some
fried
fish,
chicken.
some fried chicken and some fish for her. So to feel comfortable, she just ran in off a plane. You want her, she's hungry. And she's like, is this Harold's chicken? Like, she clearly is in tune with Chicago. She knew, was a little disappointed.
Well, you taught me a lot about Chicago. I have a sense of pride in Chicago by virtue of you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out to be here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you acknowledging me.
You have been... I literally just watched you on Meet the Press yesterday morning, right? You have had a remarkable career, worked in the Obama White House, worked for the Speaker Pelosi, worked for the Vice President, not necessarily in that order. You have been a communications policy juggernaut just by yourself. And I want you to know, as your friend, how proud I am of you, because I've had the pleasure of watching. Talk about resilience. Right. I've had a chance of watching your career, and it's been pretty remarkable.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What has been the major driver? Like, what has made Ashley continue to propel and go forward?
I think it's probably no different than you. I was a young person in Houston, Texas. My dad took me into the city. I was probably about maybe 6 or 8 years old at the time. And I asked my dad, well, why does this neighborhood look different than where we came from, the suburbs? And my dad said, well, there's a lot of factors. But many of the main reason why is because of decisions that are made for them in Washington. And it was the for them that struck me, and rubbed me wrong. I'm like, how can someone make decisions for you that has this much of an impact on your trajectory in life?
Right.
And at that moment, I was committed. So he said, if you want to make some change, if you want to do something about it, you got to go to Washington. Well, I had no idea how to get to Washington.
Wow.
My father, didn't write any checks to any elected officials. I didn't go to a school that had a really great alumni, but I was committed at that moment that I wanted to do my part to show up at that table to represent those individuals, my people. And so that really has been the main driver, is to represent my people at those tables. And I never at any point accepted no.
Right.
I was very clear-eyed about it. And then as I got, further down in my career, it sort of morphed into something different. And it became me trying to prove a point. That we could do those big jobs. We could be the communications director for the speaker. We could run an impeachment war room. How often does that happen? And I was able to do that. So that became a second driver, that I wanted to make the point that now we could do those jobs. And I just pulled everybody up with me along the way. But that was really it, is I wanted to represent my people and wanted to make sure their voices were heard at those tables.
So let's walk back, because you're an inspiration to young people in general, but young women, young Black women especially. But let's, because a lot of times people, I tell people everybody sees the glory, they don't know the story.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can't skip over the story and get straight to the glory. Like the first opportunity, so major in college, how did you end up in what was the first job in D.C.? I think I know a little bit of this, but I want everyone to fully understand, you just don't
What's the journey?
Land in D.C. and become, in the war room with the speaker.
Absolutely. So I remember the first time I uttered that I wanted to work in politics. I was standing up in an informational meeting for Delta Sigma Theta.
Okay.
And everybody had to introduce themselves.
I had to get the Delta Sigma Theta in.
Early. Okay, I had to get in there early.
I got it.
But now that we're clear on that.
I got it. We got it. We're
well,
clear.
And there's a lot of reasons why I had to get Delta in there. My greatest sort of mentors, although they didn't mentor me directly, were Deltas. Barbara Jordan, right? Shirley Chisholm. Yeah. That's why I joined that organization.
And the Texas connection.
Absolutely. Barbara Jordan was up the street in Houston, of course. who was part of the impeachment.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Of Bill Clinton. So nevertheless, okay, so take a step back. So that was the first time in that informational I stood up and said, I'm Ashley Etienne and I want to work in politics. That was the first time I said that. And after college, because I had to work my way through school, I didn't have the opportunity, and I don't think many people were doing them then, but some were definitely interning. And, I literally was waiting tables between semesters. And so I started in the Texas state legislature, and I knocked on a lot of doors, and Ron Wilson gave me an opportunity. And Ron is an exceptional individual in that he's the youngest state legislator ever in the history of Texas.
Wow.
And when he was the most senior, had an office in the Capitol.
Right.
And I just remember his chief of staff said, I'm going to give you a shot.
Right.
Because she was a Delta. And so she was like, Sora, I'm going to give you a shot, because nobody else was giving me a shot because I didn't intern, all these other things. Right. So nevertheless, but he was an interesting character because he had an office in the Capitol, and hopefully I'm not telling on him, but it's open, you carry laws in Texas. And he had these big machine guns in his office and would rock Tupac all the time. Okay. And drive a Lamborghini. He was just not the normal.
That's not typical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he taught me to think out of the box, and really taught me, I think, planted the first seed for me. And he said, the key is you have to learn the process. See, most people want to skip, to your point, over the process and get right to passing bills. So I remember he would go down to the floor every Friday. It's like, I'm going to kill at least 10 of these bills because people don't know how to, the process.
Right.
And so that was, to me, the most important first lesson I got on politics is learn the process, learn the procedures, how it all works. And so after I completed a stint at the state legislature, we drew the maps in 2003 when the Texas member fled the first time. I was behind all of that. We drew Al Green's seat, in fact. So nevertheless, and his point was then, and this was another lesson, he said, Democrats owe us this seat. According to the numbers, we should have this seat. But they don't want to give it to us, and I'm going to fight for a black and brown seat because that's the principal position to be in. And he taught me a lot of that. But nevertheless, so after that tenure was over, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was on my couch one night, and early in the morning, something came to me, had to have been God saying, it's time to go to D.C. And there was news about Jeffers switching from a Democrat to an independent. So the whole power shifted in the Senate, and something came to me, said, now is the time to go. I ran into my friend Jane Hamilton. We started together in the state legislature. It was like, girl, let's go to D.C. She was like, we don't know anybody. I was like, it'll be fine. We just got to get to D.C. Wow. So I wrote out 5 members of Congress, wrote out why they should hire me, which is probably the beginning of my communications career. Wow. And I knocked on their doors and said, hi, I'm Ashley Etienne. Here's why you should hire me. And they were very specific to the interest of that member. It was all individualized pitches. Got a job. I took the job with Ken Benson, who was going to run for U.S. Senate in Texas. I knew as a Democrat he wasn't going to win. So I'm like, I'm going to go in that office. First strategic decision, because everybody's going to leave at some point, and then I'm going to be able to rise up the ladder. So I was the front desk girl. Exactly. I was the front desk girl, and within a year and a half, I became the communications director, making 6 figures. I had no idea what I was doing, but was doing it, Wow. And then after that, I really did put my head down. I mean, you were there most of that time. I put my head down and just committed myself to the work and just engulfed myself in the work. And so after that, some other big moments in my career that were transformative. I went to, in the Obama administration, did a stint there, and then I was just sort of lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I was, unsure, but I was ready for a move. The lady who was working there at the time said, you should go work for my husband. He's running the committee for Mr. Cummings. At this time, it was almost 2012, Obama was running for a second term, and the Republican chairman of the committee said he was going to make Obama a one-term president. So I'm like, that's where the action is. So I took that leap and I went there. And so after that, I just really started to put myself in the center of the action. I didn't want an easy assignment. I wanted the hardest assignment, the one that nobody wanted. And that's what actually forced me to grow rapidly.
So now you are this communications phenomenon, right?
Well, not quite yet. I felt like I was Kanye West 1.0. Like I felt like I deserved a Grammy and hadn't yet gotten it.
But that's been the trajectory. And what I'm trying to say is, what is it about that lane in the political realm, in the policy realm, in the community? Is it that just so happens to be what you fell into and you just ran with it? Or is it something unique about that space? Because there are other lanes to run in from a policy lane. You stayed in the communications.
Yeah, I was told early that I have great communication skills, but that I was a horrible writer.
Okay.
And that was probably the first time I ever cried in my office. But then I went to graduate school and learned how to write and committed myself to it. But the thing about the communications job in politics, it's the nucleus.
Okay.
If you're doing the job right, everything revolves around you. You're the center of the spoke. And I also am a pure strategist. Like, I'm a problem solver. I like to get problems and come up with solutions, multidisciplinary solutions. And so when you're an effective communicator in the center of the action, understanding your role as the center of the spoke, that's the job. I'm a strategist. I'm not just, I'm not a spokesperson. I don't talk to the reporters. I sit down, take the problem, and come up with the solution and bring all of these pieces together and move all the trains. And so that's what I've really perfected as my skill sets.
So, I think when people think about...
Oh, and can I just say this? The communications director is in almost every meeting. Like, nothing gets out the door without going through the communications director. So that was also a reason why I chose it.
So I'm curious. So, to be doing all that you're doing, you're still fairly young. I mean, how many people in your age group can say that they've worked on the Hill, they've worked for a sitting president, at a very high level, worked for a sitting vice president, very high level, worked for the speaker at a very high level. You're on Meet the Press in every major network on a weekly basis, giving commentary and analysis. Do you ever just sit back and look at yourself and say, damn,
I'm bad.
I'm bad.
No, not yet.
Why not?
It's that saying, the top of one hill is the bottom of another. And so I've always been a striver.
Right.
And so it's never been good enough, and that's what's been the driver. It's like, it's not good enough. You did it. Great. What's next? Great. What's next? It's got to be bigger, bigger, bigger. And so it's a good and a bad thing. It's a curse and a blessing at the same time, because I'm constantly racking my brain about, well, what's the next big thing? Like, you did that was great, but what's next? And I will say, though, because I did it so quickly, I don't think I've taken stock of it all. I'm starting to write a book, and this is forcing me.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, forcing me to sit down and really acknowledge my journey.
Yeah.
What I've been able to accomplish, what rooms I was in. I was talking to a former Pelosi staffer, my colleague, and he said, Ashley, you remember you opened the government the last time we had that long shutdown. It was you. And I was like, me? I didn't even remember it. And he was like, no, we did this. You did this press conference, you impromptu. And as soon as it was live all over the news and Trump called Pelosi and said, call it off, literally. And so there's a lot of it that I haven't unpacked, but it's primarily because I'm still striving.
So I'm so glad you mentioned her name. That is Leader Pelosi. I watched you on Meet the Press yesterday, and I think I've heard some other commentary this week as she announced that she is going to retire. Would you say that you learned the most from her out of all the politicos that you've worked for?
Absolutely. I've worked for Pelosi twice, and so the question I often get, the question I get the most is, what was it like working for her? And I only got one word, and that's intense. I mean, if she were to call me right now, I'd become overwhelmed with anxiety and almost fall out of my seat. But by far, she was the person I learned the most from. Here's sort of why, because I was able to watch her evolve as a leader from the first time I worked for her. She was just the leader, to the second time when Trump came into the picture and became the president. She called me up and said, now's the time. The times have found us, quoting every founding father. You got to come back to the Hill. You can't go sell $1,000 cell phones to the hood. You got to save the hood. That was a Cummings quote. Everyone was calling me to come back. And so when I went back, I watched her evolve from a we sort of being cloaked like a lot of women do by other people. I'm gonna share this I'm gonna share this success. I'm gonna let Obama say he was responsible for ACA and not clarify that it was really me who did all the legwork to get it done. To her really stepping into her own power, another gear where she all of a sudden became an I. I am the most prodigious fundraiser in Democratic history. I'm the most prodigious legislator of all time. Like her owning her own I. And that's what positioned her to go after Trump with that level of clarity of purpose. It was almost like, a superhero meeting the most perfect villain at the most perfect time in their life, and all of that. And so I literally was soaking it all up, watching her wield power, watching her use soft and hard skills. I mean, all of these things that aren't really talked about when it comes to Pelosi or women leaders at all. And so that was a powerful experience. But I will also say she also taught me what it was to be a woman in leading, not a woman leader, but to be a woman and to lead. She taught me that you can be all of these things as a woman, a doting wife, grandmother, to, the woman that's going to put your 4-inch, pump in Putin's ass, right? Like you can be all of those women and they don't compromise the other. And that is a powerful lesson for women leaders to understand, that you can show up as a 360, bring all of these skills to bear because we have them all, right? And that was just really powerful as a young woman to see her elevate, see her boss up, but then to see her be all of those women at the same time was powerful.
What's the difference between Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama?
Oh, that's such a good question. What is the difference between the two of them? It is really hard to compare the two of them. I think their trajectory was so different that it makes them different kinds of leaders, right? I felt like, no disrespect to the president, I mean, he just sort of poof out of nowhere, accelerated. You know what I mean? Like even as he says in his own book, was it the 2000 presidential? Which presidential he went to and couldn't even get into the convention center because he couldn't afford it.
The one right before he gave the big speech.
Literally. Yeah. And then in 8 years, he's at the top of the ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, how often does that happen? You go from an unknown character, can't even get into the convention. 8 years later, you're at the top. Your name is at the top of, So I think that acceleration made him a different kind of leader than Pelosi, who was steeped in power from her father. Remember, she learned from her father. She was, in
Maryland.
Yeah. She was learning account to how to maneuver, how to manipulate, all of the different aspects of power from her father, who was a groundbreaking political figure. And then also she was a stay-at-home mom until she was 47. She didn't run until she was 47. So she had a whole other set of experiences that that he didn't. And I think that made them two different kinds of leaders. I just remember her, calling, but she's like this, hard charging, she says it all the time. She attributed to being, mother, having 5 kids in 6 years, calling him constantly, you got to do, keep going. And it's a lot for people to handle. But I think because he had such he rose at such an accelerated pace, he kind of, his feet were always off the ground. Do you know what I mean? And in beautiful ways, and I think that was necessary for him in that job. You have to have that. But as a speaker, you got to grind. I got to get it through the Congress. I got to get consensus. I got to get 200, and 18 plus people to agree to something. They're completely different jobs.
What's the difference between Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris?
I'm writing this in my book. I'm trying to figure out how to really say it. I think the vice president also had an accelerated pace in her career. And I think for that, and it was always reaching really high. And I think for that reason, the infrastructure was a little weak, and I'm learning more as I've been in those places and spaces and taking a step back, how important infrastructure is to your success. And so I would say that's the greatest difference. I think Pelosi was always building infrastructure. And I just think that, by virtue of those jobs, it just forces you to have different skills. Pelosi has an ability to look around the corner. We're talking about redistricting right now. She brought, Eric Holder and Obama together over 8 years ago, knowing we would be where we are now to say we've got to start organizing around this. So she just has, a different set of skills by virtue of the job. They're again hard to compare, but I think, that accelerated pace does make you a different type of a leader.
Women in leadership, and you sort of alluded to this, get a bad rap. The equation,
or maybe not as much credit as they deserve.
Well, in that the toughness.
Oh, okay.
As a female, gets you called the B word.
Yes.
When it's right. And so when I think about both Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris, they probably get that tough charging label. Except when I think about Miss Pelosi, perhaps, I
relish it.
I never hear that her office had a lot of transition and that there was instability and that there was strife among team members. But I did hear that with the vice president. Is it true, or is it just the label of getting a bad rap because you're a female leader? Can
I go back a second?
Yeah.
All right. I think also too, the one thing we have to give Kamala Harris credit for is she was a lawyer. DA, AG. I mean, the majority of her career, she's been a lawyer.
Right, in the state of California.
Absolutely. And many times those skills don't translate into being an effective vice president or an effective speaker, right? Like those are very different. So you've got to actually learn a new set of skills. And that was many of the challenges that we were dealing with. But at the
through line, she was still a public servant in most of her career.
But
having to be elected and serve the public.
Absolutely. But I mean, the average politician, not attorney general or DA or prosecutor, is kissing babies every weekend. They're having a whole different set of conversations about coalition building, who's supposed to be at the table. Somebody call Reverend Sharpton, like, let's build a group. I mean, there's a whole different set of challenges that you're dealing with that I think, again, give you a different lens, a different scope, a different set of skills. So I just have to point that out because I don't think people recognize that, right? Even just think about how lawyers present themselves. Do you know what I mean? A little, so nevertheless.
But I'm gonna stop you there for a second because that's interesting. I just spoke to, I'm on this tour for my book, right?
Yes, congratulations again.
Thank you, The Power to Persist. And I think I just told a group of young people, I was just at Miles College in Birmingham, and I told folks, I can't stand politicians, but I love public servants. And I think there's a distinct difference between folks who choose to do this work and folks who are called to do it. And perhaps it sounds like someone that has to translate, whatever their career was and into actually wearing a suit that fits them as a public servant. I just think there's a difference.
I think you could actually be both too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the two, are in conflict at all. Okay. But to your question about women leaders, the B word, and give it to me one more time. Nancy.
They both were tough.
Oh, okay. You said
the office.
turnover.
I think you mentioned. I think you kind of allude to this with the infrastructure comment, right?
Yeah.
That one had more stable infrastructure, and the other one seemed to be a bit unstable. I mean, there are published reports about high turnover, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to make sure that as someone who's worked in both, is that true? Like, you can't keep positioning me to compare all my bosses. Well, of course I can.
It's putting me in a tough spot.
But
that's what the learnings are. I get it.
But yeah, that's what the learnings are. But that's that's what makes you unique.
That's
You've had
true.
a very unique perspective.
Very
I can't
unique.
wait for your book to come out.
Thank you. I appreciate
because
you saying
no
that.
one has had that perspective, and so I can't help but ask one as someone who's engaged in this work with you, but as a student more so. I'm actually like, okay.
Sure, as a student, because I'm a student of the game too.
She's done what is this she's saying? And yes, have you and I had more intimate and direct conversations, candid about some of this? Yes, we have. But I'm asking very generally now, even very different than our other conversations. Like, what's the difference in these folks, and then what are some of the similarities?
Sure. So to your point about Pelosi, you're absolutely right. When I left her the second time, she said, well, how long have you been with me? And I was like, oh, it's been, 3 years. I was slightly embarrassed, almost 4 years, slightly embarrassed to say it. She was like, oh, you just got here.
Right.
But I was always on to the next thing. Like once I hit my mark, I would go into an office, go into a job with an understanding of what I wanted to achieve. Once I achieved it, I wanted to move on to the next challenge. So, but everybody in her office had been there 10, 12, 15 years. And that continuity is so important to being effective.
Makes a difference.
Yes, because you're not wasting any time.
Right.
I'm not learning you.
Right.
You're not replacing me and everyone's learning you
Right.
all over again. Then the principal is frustrated because it's like people should know the answers to these questions, but everybody's getting to know you. And I can imagine that instability, even for a principal, is challenging to manage.
Right.
Now, when I worked for the vice president, it was the first year in the White House. It was a challenging first year. We were in the middle of COVID. And you know this, I am a single mom and I was caring for my father. My father went blind. So I'm dealing with COVID, a kid who's in COVID, and a father who, when I was on my way to the White House, is like, by the way, I cannot see. Well, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. What am I supposed to do with somebody who can't see? Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden I have to make every meal for you, teach you how to eat with a fork. I mean, it was really challenging for me. And so as much as I loved her, as much as I believed in what we were trying to achieve, as much as I thought that I was uniquely positioned to help her because I was leading the team that won the House the second time and made Pelosi a speaker a second time. So I knew exactly the challenges that women have to go through leading. And then, of course, I worked for Barack Obama as a special assistant. And so I understood what it meant to be a Black person leading. So I felt like if all the people in this town, I am uniquely positioned for this job. And I was very committed to it. But my life circumstances just didn't enable me to hold on. And that's a challenging building to be in. And she's right in her book. There were a lot of folks that were trying to take her down almost immediately. And you had Fox News trying to take her down. It was everybody was shooting at her. And so it was just in a new team, in a new space. And to be honest with you, I think me and my deputy were the only two people on the team that had worked in the White House before. So that gave us a different perspective than the people who had never been there before. Because I'm like, play big, play big. I know how to play big in this space. But, if you got people around you that don't know what that looks like in that space, then it was easy to undermine my efforts and my suggestions. So in the first few years, there was a lot of turnover primarily because of that reason. Now, what happened before in her Senate office and other places, I can't, you'd have to research that and trust the public accounts. But to your point, more than anything else, the infrastructure around you is very critical. And having that staff is the most critical. And I will say this about Pelosi, though. I was on Mark Halperin's podcast not too long ago, and he said, the difference between Pelosi and all these other people is she actually puts the best people around her. Wherever she's trying to go, the people around her have already been. And if it's not in that room, she's always seeking counsel outside of that room. And so I just was honored and privileged to be one of those ones that she entrusted with such a huge amount of responsibility. Because I broke glass ceilings with her.
So you made reference to this, the vice president's book, new book, 107 Days. As a former vice president, historic presidential candidate, in this book, did she miss the mark of making and paving the way for her to run for president again?
I think only time will tell. But what I will say as a strategist, if she had called me and asked me, I would have told her to write a different book. I think Kamala Harris is a badass. She is historic at every job she's ever held. She's been the first, broken every glass ceiling. And she was a part of a team that, again, I've worked in another White House. Joe Biden killed it. Killed it. They don't want to give him credit because Trump was running against him for 4 years. So we missed what was happening because this sideshow was Trump. And he was intentionally distracting us from it. But IRA, chips, manufacturing, guns, pick it, choose it. He did it. Infrastructure. I've been in DC 25 years, and there's every week is infrastructure week, and nobody was able to get it done except for Joe Biden. And she was a critical part of all of that. So my advice would have been, write that book about being a badass. If you say that people didn't write your story and Joe Biden didn't give you the opportunity, or people didn't defend you, or you say your mother says that you've got to go out there and tell people who you are, you had 300 pages to do it. And I would have told her, do it, because you don't get this opportunity again. Like, I'm not so, I hope you get a second book. I pray. I'm sure she will. But the point is, in those kind of positions, when you've done as much as she's done, you've got to, as a woman especially, you've got to constantly reinforce it. You've got to constantly tell people, re-credential yourself is what we call it in communications. Women have to do that. Men don't have to do that. They walk into a room with a bravado and everybody already gives them, license, lead way to do whatever the hell he wants. We've got to step in and keep reminding people, I impeached the president, right? So that was my argument. I thought she should have written a book that centered Kamala Harris and that focused on and elevated what she's been able to achieve in her life. And I think it would have sold exceptionally well. I mean, just like this one, I think it would have positioned her to do anything she wanted to do. I just don't know why write a book and go around the world talking about Joe Biden when you've achieved what you've achieved, and then what? Nobody still knows who you are. Her Achilles heel has always been, this was my first conversation with her. I remember I was walking 8 o'clock in the morning and I got a call from one of her top advisors. I know you know who I'm talking about. It's like, be prepared. The vice president's going to call you in 30 minutes. And I'm like, for what? Like, well, why is she calling me? And got on the phone with her.
Can't wait to get that top advisor, that my fellow Chicagoan on the podcast one day.
I'll make a call for you. Nevertheless, and we got on the phone and I said, we're going to need to spend time addressing what I think is your Achilles heel, which is that you're not fully defined, which is good and bad, but you're not fully defined. We've got to do that. And then we've got to position you as a governing partner with the president, but create your own lane separate from the president so that you have something to build on, whatever you want to do in life. So anyway, so I've always known that was her Achilles heel. I mean, you can still see that in the polling now. People are like, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I mean, and so I don't know about her. I don't know what she's done. So my point was just, she should have actually written that book instead.
Life has a funny way of testing us right when we think we have it all figured out. Those moments remind us that resilience is not about never failing. That's what the Power to Persist is all about. 8 simple habits to help you stay grounded, strong, and focused when life gets a little heavy. I'd be honored if you came along on this journey with me. Visit LamellMcMorris.com to get your copy of The Power to Persist and listen to the Power to Persist podcast so we can continue to persist together. You reference a couple of individuals who were there at the founding of the Congressional Black Caucus in the 70s. The mantra of that group of individuals that founded the Congressional Black Caucus was no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. You wave the Democratic flag very, very loudly and tall. Has that truly benefited the Black community to be so wedded to one particular party?
Yeah.
Given the inception.
Are you in my head? You must be in my head.
No, just asking questions. I'm just a guy with a little podcast here.
We haven't even
here on the south side of Chicago.
We've not even had any side conversations
We've not had
about
these
this.
I'm just.
I will say, I was a supporter, strong proponent of, and did everything I could to lift up and hold up the Democratic Party while representing myself and my people. And but now that I'm out, I've found that I've always had this responsibility to be a truth teller. I don't know why God gave me that responsibility. I mean, I would be the person that would go into the vice president's office and say, it's these 3 people on the West Wing that are trying to take you down. Why would they do that, Ashley? Why would they do that? 3 years later, now me telling Pelosi once that, the office doesn't live up to who you say you are. and her looking me in my face, being like, and who are you to tell me? But that's always been the responsibility that I've been given. And so now I'm out, and now I want to hold the party accountable to who it says it actually is. Mm-hmm. We are, as Black people, in a silent crisis right now. Yeah, 400,000 Black women have lost their jobs this year. 7.5% unemployment. Mm-hmm. Black men not going to college. Supreme Court talking about reversing, the 65 Civil Rights Act, VRA, Section 2. I mean, pick it and choose it. We are in a storm right now. And to be honest, if I have to be a truth teller, I don't know that the Democratic Party is committed to addressing those issues. I've not seen it demonstrated yet. I'll give you a good example because I know they always push back. I've found this out. You can't be a truth teller in the party. So nevertheless.
That's a heavy statement.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm finding that out the hard way in a lot of ways. But I don't give a damn. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kamala Harris raised $2 billion. Mm-hmm. And Black people made 1% of the money off of that. Mm-hmm. You know what that says to me? Keep you on the plantation, okay? Your job is to turn out these votes, not to be a partner in decision making and making the money. I mean, again, I've been in the party 25 years, the same 5 to 8 people making all the decisions and all the money. Strategic and resource decisions. And they don't look like me at all.
So are you saying that what does no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests mean to you?
I'm saying I think we have to get back committed to that because there's a lot of people that have been at that table that allowed something like that to go down. Mm-hmm. And my thing is that's not in our interest. Okay, there's a direct correlation between who's making the decisions and the fact that we've been bleeding support among Black people since 2012. I mean, how does Donald Trump get 16% of Black vote? People are actively voting for races. They know he is. But in their minds, they don't see these two parties as any different. That's a problem.
Or they're connecting their interests to one and not the other.
And that could be true. But the reality is you look at what the White House is doing now. I mean, the Labor Department put out these images of what they want the workforce to look like, and it's all white men. I mean, it's every indication is that Donald Trump, to quote Kamala Harris, is trying to go back to a time with white male dominance. So, and I can't imagine that's lost on everybody that voted for him. So anyways, my question is when do we get back to that? So let me give you a good example. So our interest should be what I just said about the silent crises. Mm-hmm. We should be hyper-focused on this silent crises, mm-hmm. CBC included. Mm-hmm. So 350,000 Black women that lost their job. Mm-hmm. So I called over to the DNC. Has the chairman ever said anything about the fact that his most loyal base, we gave you 92% of our votes, is out of jobs? Because I mean, you said you're focused on the economy. I'm just trying to figure out, can you at least get me in the conversation? Mm-hmm. I mean, right? I'm not asking you to shift gears and focus on something that's inconsistent with what you want. This is what you say you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. This is what you say is a winning issue. Have you said anything about Black women yet? Or 7.5% of Black unemployment? No. Okay, well, so you've said a lot about a lot of things that don't matter and don't measure up to the fact that your most loyal base, because you are not a party without us. You're nothing without us, honestly. I mean, from, our money to our energy, our culture, our ability to turn out votes. I mean, all of that stuff, you're nothing without us. So, okay, so no, he didn't say anything about it. They were like, oh, well, this, young Black communicator issued a statement. I was like, what is this? What is going on? Okay. Called the CBC. Did the CBC issue a statement? Didn't see a statement from the CBC. Mm-hmm. Called Mr. Jeffrey's office, who happens to look like both of us. Mm-hmm. Did y'all issue a statement on it? Didn't see no statement. What is going on? Because whose interests are you serving now? I'm concerned about this. So when I first walked into your studio, it's a beautiful studio, but it actually evokes a lot of emotion walking through your studio. The faces, the places, the events. I mean, all of it speaks to this permanent interest. And what got me sad is I'm not sure where those leaders are anymore. Who is going to lead this thing? I mean, that's why I'm in Chicago, having meetings, trying to find the answer to that question. I mean, and if you're a religious person like you are, and I am deeply, is it Joshua's generation now? I'm not sure. Does Moses not realize he's dead? I'm not sure what's going on. But we're just in this crazy funk that feels like no one's interest is our interest. So maybe I'm being pulled in a different direction now, just like that young girl who went into the inner city of Houston and said, well, what is going on? They're making decisions for these people. Sounds very much like the Democratic Party right now. You're not at the table, but I'm making decisions for you. Sounds like these other institutions. I mean, I think that statement has never been more important than today.
So you have been staffer, strategist, worked on behalf of these principals, these policymakers, larger than life individuals, some would say. You're now a commentator on television. You have your own consulting. What's next for Ashley? It sounds like something bigger is on the horizon.
Well, you have to ask God. I'm asking. I haven't gotten an answer yet, but I'm moving one foot in front of the other. And I think part of it is becoming courageous, learning how to take the incoming, applying what I saw in those rooms, understanding that I now embody what I saw in those rooms. So I'm trying to figure out what Pelosi provoked me to think about right before we went to, do you mind if I tell a little story?
Sure. So
we, you remember the Mueller investigation and everyone was hanging their hat and investing a lot in what Mueller was going to say. The hearing happened and it was a flop. And I only went back to Pelosi's office under two conditions. One, that she gave me the top job and made me the communications director, which was a historic event for me. And the second was that I wanted to run the opposition to Donald Trump. I didn't want to do no healthcare, educate. No, I just wanted to get up every day and wear him out every day. That's all I wanted to focus on. And she was like, you got it. That's your job. So when the Mueller situation happened, I felt like it's over. It's done. I came back for nothing. We lost. This man is Teflon. Nothing is sticking on him. So I went to our policy director's desk, Dick Meltzer, put my head down in my hand and I started crying, And so if there's no crying in baseball, it's the ultimate sin in politics. So I'm crying and I'm like, he says to me, well, you're trying to do something that nobody's ever done before. You're trying to take out the emperor. Like, why would you think that was going to be easy? And I'm like, well, and I'm just sort of like head spinning. And then Pelosi comes up and she says, you have to know your power. I asked you back here for a reason. If you don't know what that reason is, and if you don't know what your power is, then you're no good to me and you're no good to the country. And that, sucked up my tears. And then that started me thinking about, well, first, before I started to think about what my power is, I'm like, who is this lady? Of course she could, this white woman's worth $25 billion and, her daddy is who he is. Of course she knows her power. Of course she could think of herself in the context of power. But here I am, this little black girl who didn't learn how to read until the 6th grade. There's nothing that would suggest I should be in this room with this level of responsibility. So I had to really examine myself and start to ask, well, what is my power? And I'm on that journey now, is understanding what that actually is, but being fearless in pursuit of that interest that got me to DC.
Yeah, I tell people a lot of times they're sitting on a ham sandwich starving. I think that what you are looking for, you represent. And
Absolutely.
I hope that one of the conclusions that God brings you to is that perhaps, you are the leader that our community and that our country needs at this time. But I want to...
What a scary proposition, though. You know what I mean? Like...
Well, we need more people to be scared instead of thinking that they actually have all the answers and that that God, dropped them down on earth. Let's get some people actually who fear, like the right, yeah. That's
absolutely.
Part of it.
And too often leaders don't talk about fear.
Yeah,
and how they have overcome and had to grapple with fear in the moment.
So that's a perfect segue.
Oh, good.
My book, The Power to Persist. I try to put forth these 8 habits that will help, people live a life of resilience, at least pursue a journey
Absolutely.
of resilience. Attitude, focus, agility, dogged determination.
Totally. That's my favorite, by the way.
Vulnerability.
Yes. Ooh, scary.
And faith, right? Out of those, your journey clearly encompasses several of those
Absolutely.
habits. You sort of just said which one is your favorite, but which one do you lean in the most? And what has been, out of those habits, what's been the most critical on your journey of resilience?
I'll say this. I mean, the beauty of your book is that each chapter applies differently at different points of your life. I mean, there were different, when I first started on the Hill, at the very bottom, dogged determination was necessary.
Right.
Now I'm, to your point, at a principal level, and dogged determination is not enough.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, each one of them are applied differently at different points of your life, which is why I recommend everyone get the book, because you'll find yourself pulling it off the shelf at different points. Like, it's one of those resources. And so I commend you for really thinking that bigly about what you wanted to put on paper, because that's very important. But I would say the one that is constant for me has always been faith. I found myself in any room, from the Oval Office to, the Senate chamber in the middle of impeachment, pulling my phone out and reading scripture in hard moments. So for me, that is what's undergirded my entire journey. There's no way, again, you could tell me, based on my own story, father an addict, all these things, not being able to read, not having any major advantages other than a commitment and my faith. It's all God. There's no other way to explain it. And so for me, at every stage, that was necessary, and still is actually what I'm finding now, even more necessary in my life than any of the other chapters, because you've made it through, but what's on the other side and where you need to go is very unclear.
Yeah.
When you're on the Hill and you're like, okay, I'm moving up, like, there's a clear sort of trajectory. Now, can you get that? Depends on a lot of factors, but you can see where you want to go. Now I'm out of all of that space. And to your first question, your question is like, well, what's next? And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm moving in the darkness. I'm like Harriet Tubman at night. You know what I mean? Not knowing where I'm going or what's on the other side, but I'm moving forward. So for me, faith undergirds me and is the most important right now in my life.
When I look at you, I think about your mini-me, that beautiful young lady that is your daughter.
Yes.
That looks exactly
Isn't that perfect?
like you.
If you only gonna have one, thank God they look like it.
When you think about your daughter, Vivian, what is the chief lesson that you want to teach her about being resilient in this lifetime?
For me, I want her to walk away looking at my story and even all of the people I've worked for, and understand that the North Star has to be excellence. Excellence is hard to deny. Now, they may deny it for a minute, but it always rises to the top. And so if you strive for excellence, everything works itself out. And that's what I've learned. As I mentioned, there were times in my career where I felt like Kanye West 1.0. I can refer to that since I'm in Chicago.
Yes, you can.
When he felt like he was a genius but wasn't being recognized. I felt like that for a lot of years. But the reality is I got a call from Pelosi saying, come back. I got a call from the White House saying, come over. Although I've been knocking on the door of you remember this, Obama White House for 6 years trying to get a job, writing my own job description. Like, how about this? How about that? How about trying to get in? But on the other end of the call was them saying, we've been watching you. And that blew my Kanye West theory out of the water, people watching. But it's because of that excellence. You put yourself in the center of I put myself in the center of the action. and always try to be the best at it. That was always my goal. When I showed up to Washington, took the Ron Wilson with me, I was like, so what's the game here? And they were like, well, you want to get a commission and you want to get some red lines. I got 2 commissions, one from Barack Obama, the other from Joe Biden. And my red lines happened to be the impeachment of the most contemptible president in American history. So I did it.
What's it like being on this side of the fence? So you have been staffer, worked, in these quote unquote jobs. Now you're on the other side. You're an entrepreneur now. You are doing, I think, some consulting. You've got clients. What's it like? What's the transition like from on that side of the fence to this side of the fence?
My daughter, if you ask my daughter, she would say that I'm still in my chrysalis phase, that I'm still in my cocoon transitioning. It's a hard transition because that work is so purposeful, so mission driven.
Right.
You wake up every day feeling like, Braveheart. You know what I mean? I'm defending my country. I'm protecting the interests of my people. And then you leave it all like, I got shot out of it, literally. Unexpectedly, I gotta go, And so it's hard to find a new purpose now. And so I'm asking God, well, what do I do with all of that stuff? I can't take that stuff and go advise CEOs on some stupid thing. You know what I mean? Which I do, and it's great. And to all my clients, none of your stuff is stupid, right? But you get my point. I mean, that is such purposeful work in those places and spaces. So
Are you saying that you cannot connect your current work to purposeful and meaningful objectives, although it may be for a corporate interest?
no, I can. But my what I'm
Your fellow Houstonian, Rodney Ellis, told me you can do good and make money at the same time.
Yeah, but I've never been driven by making money. I've been driven by making change and improving people's lives. So the question is, how do you take what you've learned and transition it into both of those things, right?
Okay.
But that wakes you up every morning feeling like you're walking in your purpose. So I think I'm just waiting for the answer. I don't want to rush it because, again, at every stage of my life, the answers come to me. And, I've had all of these events in my life that really drive the point that I'm not in control. I've lost 2 brothers before the age of 45, before they were 45. And, and that drives the point that you're not in control of any of it. And so, so I'm waiting for the answer. But I think the hardest part of the transition is to really find that purpose.
Right.
And to be committed to that purpose. I mean, because work is work, but that was never work for me, That was, again, a life's mission. And so now I've got to figure out, well, what's the next one?
When Ashley is riding in her car, what's on her playlist?
So it's interesting. I think lately I've been listening to a little Cardi because...
As in Cardi B?
Yes, because I feel like people were taking shots, and I think she's got some great songs that can be affirming, although explicit and, maybe hidden like, I'm killing you hoes. Like that is affirming in a lot of ways if you're listening to it. Or hello, it's me, affirming, you know what I mean? So I think, that has been helpful to me because, again, as I said, when you're in those places and spaces, you understand what your mission is. You understand your role. And so now I've got to find it. And so people are taking shots. People are critical of what I have to say. They don't want you to tell the truth. They don't want to be held accountable. And so I found that I've got to keep myself going. And so some of these songs do that. But I mean, to be honest with you, I wake up to Kirk Franklin every morning, Joel Osteen every morning. I mean, that's how I start my day. But in my car, when I'm like going into battle, Cardi's been a little affirming as of late.
What does Ashley Etienne do for fun?
I don't know. I don't. I don't do for fun. I don't do fun.
All right. Well, let me.
I'm too serious to have fun.
Yeah. So let me.
No,
let me
it's
go.
not true. That's not true.
No, it's not
Okay,
true.
okay.
So let me go. Let me help you answer the
thank you.
question. So I have noticed,
Yes,
as your friend over the years, that you have embraced in this very fun way. As a matter of fact, I tried to put a welcome photo of you up that signifies this. you've tried to embrace your creative and fashion side, and that seems to be fun for you. Do I have that right?
No, that's right. No,
Okay.
that's absolutely fun. I mean, right. It's, right that it's fun. I've always been an artist. I mean, in some respects, I have beautiful artwork and,
Right. But it's gone like on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
You like shifted gears. I mean, I remember Ashley working on the hill with these colorful stockings, and I'm like, man, that's kind of crazy. But it's
that was fashion.
it was definitely fashion. But I was like, whoa. But
I will
now,
say though, you're absolutely. I think what you're seeing right now is me putting myself on display.
yeah,
That is what's different because I've been in the shadows for such a long
Yeah.
time. And that was so comfortable for me being
embracing the fashion sense is part of you coming out of.
Well, I feel like I've always had a fashion sense.
Yeah.
And I've always been creative, but I haven't always put myself out there.
Got it.
For the world to know that about me.
Got it.
So now what I'm getting comfortable doing is, again, getting out of the shadows of these big figures.
Yeah.
And finding my own voice and my own self and my own power and putting that on display, no matter what people think about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're seeing is like me putting Ashley out there in new ways. And initially it was very scary because it's easier to give somebody the talking point and say, well, you didn't do X, than to take yourself on Meet the Press and represent yourself, your boss, your former bosses, and and all of that. So I think that's what you're saying. But in terms of fun, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I mean, I love dinner parties. I love having people over. I'm a people person. I enjoy spending time with my daughter. I'm now the deputy troop leader for her Girl Scout troop. I know.
Okay.
Can you believe this tomboy has a girly girl?
Fascinating. Okay.
So now that I've left the business, I'm really, to your point, throwing myself into all of these other interests that I've always had, but now I can fully embrace them. And being a mom, a present mom is one, getting into my looks, all of that is another one. But it's really stepping out from the shadows and putting myself out there. And a lot of people in this business have no problems doing that. They'll take credit for stuff they didn't even do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like mediocrity is ruling the day. So people all the time tell me, you should be doing more, you should be doing. And I'm like, let me tell you a little something. I'm a little shy. So what you're seeing is me trying to come out of my own shell and out of the shadows to fully embrace Ashley.
So if I were to lift up a curtain in this room and there were 500 young people assembled, what would be the 5 pieces of advice you would give them?
One I would say is to embrace the unknown. And what I mean by that is go in places and spaces nobody's been to. Chart your own course. Second piece of advice would be remain anchored in your faith, whatever that is. You have to have an anchoring that keeps you moving through it all. The third piece of advice I would say is don't obsess about this mentorship thing. Is really whatever room you're in, absorb every piece of information that you can. Every room is a mentoring opportunity. Every event and opportunity is a growth opportunity. Embrace it that way. You step into a room, that's your opportunity to grow. You don't need someone sitting down with you, help, literally. I would say the fourth piece of advice would be this is a new thing that these young people I think are obsessed over, which is this imposter syndrome. I don't even know what that means. I feel like if God opened the door for you, kick that down and go and literally
you belong.
Refocus that energy on being prepared for the room.
Yeah.
You're playing mind games
Not
with
question
yourself.
whether or not you belong there.
Yeah, because if God presented the opportunity, that means you belong in that room. Now you have to commit yourself to being prepared for that room and achieving in that room. And too often people get obsessed with this notion about inadequacy. And I don't understand that. And I just think it's a waste of energy and waste of time to be playing these mind games with yourself. And that's what enables people to run circles around you because you're in your head, thinking you're not supposed to be there. And I would say the fifth piece of advice would be, if I had to go back to mentoring, I think one thing about mentoring is your mentors don't have to look like you. I mean, right now I make money with white Republican men. No Democrat has ever called me and said, let's make money together. I can be on a panel with a Republican and he's like, at the end of it, we should make money together. Dick Meltzer did not look like me and was my biggest advocate in Pelosi's office. It was smart for me to attach myself to him because he was a Pelosi whisperer, brilliant lawyer, knew the institution, and believed in me. So I would say the fifth piece of advice I would say is build and assemble yourself a table, a diverse set of advisors. They should not all be in your field. It could be your grandmother, it could be your pastor, it could be Melody Hobson, pick and choose, but it should be a diverse set of people that can give you a diverse set of perspectives as you move through life. Because the reality is, to your book's point, you're going to need different things at different points, right? And so you need to assemble this table so you can draw on all of these experiences and expertise to help move you forward. And attached to that, I would say, is don't always look up. You can look left and right. Many of your peers are going to be the best people to help you move through life with the level of resilience. So hopefully that was good. Off the top of my head, five pieces of advice.
Ashley Etienne, you make your family proud.
Thank you, sir.
You make your friends like me proud. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me on the Power to Persist podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
And sliding by the South Side while you're in the city of Chicago.
Next time, have some heralds, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I'll do just that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening so you stay in the know about future episodes. See you next time, my friends.
Resonate.